with realistically, this was basically an offering to Lord Trump in a lot of ways, you know. And then, I mean, we hear about the Ryan Terry Foundation, which is a Border Patrol agent who got shot and killed with some of those Fast and Furious guns.
Oh yeah, the ones they were like the U.S. government was selling to them.
Yeah,
we can talk about that later.
Yeah,
fucking nuts.
But you don't hear anything about Rodrigo and Armenta. You don't hear anything about their daughter who lost an arm being shot by some of those guns. These are people that
Mexican victims. Yeah,
and there's hundreds of them.
Yeah.
There's a very weird one-sided narrative being taught and said online and in the media as far as this problem. It's like the U.S. saying there's a problem in Mexico, build a wall, and let's have all these problems stay over there.
Right.
But on the other side, you have Fast and the Furious. You have many Mexican presidents turning out to be CIA employed agents, and you have a foreign policy that U.S. has been instating in Mexico that has been horrible to the populace in Mexico.
Would you mind just explaining what you mean by the presidents literally being CIA employed?
There's been some uncovering of documents recently, the past 5-6 years. And people have realized that a lot of Mexican presidents in the 60s and the 70s turned out to be employed officials by the CIA.
Like paid assets?
Yeah, paid assets. Several presidents of Mexico have been found out to be paid assets from the CIA. We're also living through this historic moment where Mexico has deported many in the cartel individuals, including a man who supposedly was responsible for the death of a DEA agent, Kiki Camarena.
They deported that guy?
Yeah, he's deported here.
Who was that guy?
Kiki Camarena supposedly uncovered a bunch of things in Guadalajara.
Right.
The name is escaping me right now. Oh God.
Most people out there are familiar, but
yeah,
it was depicted in the show Narcos Mexico in 1986, DEA agent.
A bunch of head injuries. So
no, it's all good.
The name is escaping.
Basically, we deported this potential guy.
But the truth is that a lot of what happened in that time in the 80s, 70s, 80s in Mexico, the Contra affair was happening.
Yes.
And the U.S. was trying to figure out how to arm these rebel groups and get into a fight in Central America. But the U.S. was just getting off Vietnam, so they didn't want to spend any money on this and support this. But the U.S. was adamant about it. So a lot of these Contra rebels that were fighting in Central America were actually being trained in Mexico by the CIA, and a lot of the ways they were arming them was through funds produced by drug sales and basically cartel movements in this area. Kiki Camarena probably uncovered some of this.
Probably. He was a really good agent.
This is beyond my time there, but from the people that I've talked to who were around for this type of thing, this is what their opinion is.
Right.
And so it's the surrealness of being Mexican and also now being in the U.S. and seeing how both narratives are kind of being played out. The DEA has their man who killed Kiki Camarena, but on the Mexican side, the idea is the CIA killed Kiki Camarena. So who do you actually have?
Yeah, are you talking about Rafa Caro Quintero?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rafael Caro Quintero.
All right, because I was mixed up for a second.
Yeah.
When you said he was deported, I was thinking you were saying this was like an American citizen guy.
So
you think Rafa was paid by CIA?
They were all sent to the U.S. authorities. Right now, the U.S. is basically hanging a giant axe of tariffs over Mexico.
That's one way to put it.
The federal government in Mexico is at odds with the U.S. The federal government in Mexico is run by a lady named Claudia Sheinbaum, a part of the Morena Party, which a lot of people see as the fourth transformation of Mexico. This different way of doing this anti-corruption party. But it's formed of every single member of other parties that just escaped ship and joined their party. She said that they discovered that a lot of these cartel guys were about to be released under the legal actions, which has happened in Mexico before, including Caro Quintero, who got released and just released by a judge and just disappeared into Mexico before he was subsequently arrested again. So she said that they were about to release a lot of these guys, which is completely bogus. I don't. Maybe one or two of them. So in an attempt to appease the U.S. and like really not have these tariffs come through, he sent members of the original members of the Zetas, Caro Quintero, a bunch of these guys to the U.S. With realistically, this was basically an offering to Lord Trump in a lot of ways, you know. That and then the tariffs actually, they said, well, you know what, no go, we're still going to do the tariffs, and now they're backing them down. So there's this weird back and push thing with the U.S. and Mexico right now. On the Trump side, these are people who are adamant about the Mexican government and the federal government's involvement in cartel activities. On the Mexican side, it's like the U.S. is also complicit in sending weaponry, having a giant consumer base, and responsibilities are being just tossed back and forth. And also corruption on the U.S. side. There has to be.
Oh, of course.
There has to be some of that. So
it's not one-sided.
So politics on both sides are pointing fingers at each other. And in the middle are us, citizenship. On the U.S. side, a giant generation of kids being eaten up by this fentanyl epidemic that some of it does come from Mexico, some of it comes from other places. And on the Mexican side, mass graves being discovered across the country. The war is very real. People march for Palestine in the U.S. or march for the Ukrainian wars or for Ukrainians. Meanwhile, on the southern border, there are thousands of people missing. Yeah. And when I say missing, I mean they're gone. Talking to somebody in Monterrey who was a part of some of these special operations, working in some of these cartels, he described to me this method of body disposal. And mind you, I lived through the pozolero thing in Baja, where he was using caustic soda to get rid of bodies.
Caustic soda?
Caustic soda, yeah.
How does that even work?
It's a chemical mixture. You can get it all at Home Depot, and it's basically a homemade acid that you can dissolve bodies with.
Oh my God.
This was something that he said he learned from Israeli special forces guys that went to train some of the cartels on the border, right? Again, don't quote me on that. There's a bunch of books on this. That's in his testimony. That's what he said. Then I go to Monterrey recently, and I hear this method. I'd never heard about this method, but it's an interesting one. You heat up diesel fuel in a drum. And diesel won't burn, so it just gets really hot. And then you put the body in diesel fuel, and it will just cook and dissolve everything. He told me this method, and just imagining the nothing is left. Maybe some sort of dental prosthesis you might have, or some sort of I don't know, implant. But that's about it. Everything else gets gone. We are worried about the conflicts that are going on overseas in the U.S., and there are mass graves being discovered all over the country that have been filled by some of these criminal organizations for decades now.
Who's in these graves, by and large?
Everything from, people that don't make it through recruitment, because some of these cartels are actually recruiting people by force. I'll give you the example of what's going on right now in Jalisco. They just found this training camp in Jalisco.
A cartel training camp.
A new generation cartel training camp. And I must mention new generation because they're a different entity, like a different type of cartel. Yeah. They've changed the game in a lot of ways. They took a page from the Zeta book. The Zetas were a bunch of ex-Mexican special forces who were sent to combat a certain cartel and ended up joining them. These are School of the Americas, Mexican, U.S. Special Forces trained individuals, high-level people. They took a lot of the guerrilla warfare manual that the U.S. implements across the globe, and implemented in Mexico. So the videos that you start seeing of people getting hacked with a chainsaw or exploded in the middle of a field with dynamite and stuff like that started showing up from cartels. That came from U.S. propaganda training that some of these Zeta guys had, which then inspired the ISIS videos that you see on film.
Yep. I remember those. Yeah.
I just wanted to put that out there as far as like, because the U.S. has a responsibility here. And I just want to make that really clear as far as like these entities in some way, shape or form at a root have U.S. training or have some sort of U.S. involvement with their creation. The Zetas became what they became. A counter to that were these Mata Zeta groups, these tactical units set up in and around places like Sinaloa, where they were going after the Zetas. This is where the New Generation Cartel comes from. It's a highly militarized, hyper-violent group of cartels. This is not the guys that have a tiger in their backyard rolling around the city with AKs in the back of a truck. There's some of that.
These are like almost uniform type motherfuckers.
They just issued this warning against some of the Michoacan family to cartels that they're going to go to war with them, and you see them. There's a video of them out there right now. The New Generation Cartel issues a statement of war. It says, I think.
Oh, a statement.
So interestingly enough, they're going to war with La Familia Michoacana in Michoacan.
So
again, if the U.S. feels no responsibility, all of our avocados and a lot of our that's where it comes from. So if you go to Chipotle,
I don't go to Chipotle, but I eat avocados every day.
Well, that means that we are responsible for a lot of this violence down there, because a lot of these avocado orchards are paying paid protection money to the cartels, and now they're fighting it out for this.
Yeah, because isn't it like, I didn't know much about this, but I think Kat Schultz was telling me, if my memory serves me right, like avocado trees take a long time to grow. So if they're even destroyed at all, your whole business is fucked.
Yeah. So if you don't pay us extortion money, we'll burn your fucking field.
Jesus Christ.
The New Generation Cartel issued a threat of war against these families that control parts of Michoacan. These families these are cartel families, La Familia Michoacana.
Yeah.
They've been fighting with the federal government against the New Generation Cartel in drone and trench warfare in Michoacan for years now.
Trench warfare?
Trench warfare.
That's my next question was going to be, what does this warfare look like? Now you're kind of answering it.
Trenches, drones being sent over, dropping bomblets.
Oh my God.
IEDs being used to target military. There's a current petition by local authorities to a federal judge to like, hey, can you clear these mines out of the way? Because that's going on in Michoacan.
Oh my God.
I explained all this because they just found this mass grave in Jalisco, Auschwitz-like. It's being called the Mexican Auschwitz.
How big we talking?
It's a giant compound. It was utilized for training, is what they say. So people would be recruited forcefully. Like, hey, you want a security job? Yeah. Oh, come meet me here. Oh, hey, you want to work at this call center? Hey, come meet me here. And they were looking for young individuals, basically. You get bussed over to this field somewhere, and then your instructors come out. And if you don't achieve the elements of the instruction that you're about to give, you get a shot in the head, or you get fed to the lions, is something one of the survivors said, that they had lions there. Or you would get disappeared. There's shoes everywhere on this place, and clothing. And again, if people want to know how serious the Mexican federal government is about any of this, that same farm was already raided by the federal forces
before the mass grave happened.
Before they found this mass grave, they just went there, found a bunch of guns, found some dudes, arrested them, and left. And they didn't do any investigation.
No smell, no nothing.
They didn't do any investigation.
Come on.
If that's what they say. Then these groups, there's several groups across the country of Madres Buscadoras, basically mothers of the disappeared. There's one in Jalisco who found, like, hey, there's bodies here. There's a ton of clothes, luggage, and pictures of people in this place. We should investigate. And that's what brought the attention of the media. There's a lot of shoes there, and people's shoes don't get taken usually unless their bodies are going to be disposed of. Yeah. And they don't burn the shoes because they create a lot of smoke, and a very big black pile of smoke coming out is probably going to be something that's kind of suspicious. So there's no calculations exactly how many bodies are there, but a lot of people died in that place. There's a letter that was found there. I don't remember all of the letter, but I just remember it said something about it like, if I don't come back, I hope you remember me, and I remember that I love you. Right? This just handwritten letter by this kid who
a kid.
I mean, he was probably 19. Who under false he was just invited to this place for a job, right? There's been many of these cases across the country. Now we have the eye of the world right now because of what's going on in Mexico and the border and all this pressure, but this has been going on for years.
Yes.
It's only now that the horror of what this is has kind of like seeped into the American populace as far as what the news and people speaking about some of these things.
Not enough, though, by the way. Not enough.
Not enough. I've been called a fearmonger or that I exaggerate some of the stuff that goes on in Mexico many times. And the amount of just death alone, 90%, if not more, of the homicides in Mexico are never solved.
90% or more.
90% or more.
Did they even try to solve them?
I was a state agent. And among many of my roles that I performed there, a lot of them I had to take custody of certain pieces of evidence or things that could be utilized for an investigation later on. And it was almost a running joke that a lot of the stuff that we secured or collected, I remember this one time we collected a lot of casings. They put them all in a bag, and the guy just laughs at it and grabs the bag casing and just throws it in this room, right, full of other casings. And you have to think about it this way. Like in one of the offices that I used to work with, the forensic service was probably 20 people. And at the height of the war in Tijuana, there was like sometimes 12 bodies coming in a night. So I get it. It is an attempt to solve a criminal aspect when it's really a war fighting, like insurgency.
Yes.
So it's just a very absurd government effort to try and solve issues in Mexico that are of a criminal base when you have a group like Zetas, who are special forces trained individuals who then showed other people how they did their thing. And now you have a country that has whole sections of it being policed by cartel forces.
Yeah.
Or has whole elements of its political class be basically paid for by some of these cartel organizations. And people might consider that exaggerated or like, hey, no, this is propaganda. There's a reason why so many political candidates got assassinated and have been assassinated in Mexico in the past few decades.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.